reality, John did have a $1 million smile until he went to the dentist. Maybe a year and a half ago, and they removed all but one lower tooth. That $1 million smile was not there. And so when he got his new bridge, I said, "Oh man, you look so good with that bridge." I said, "That single tooth was really tough." He said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I said, "What would you have done?" So, who else would like to tell a story here?
No, I'd like to say something.
You're a neighbor, is that right?
I am a neighbor of John. Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. Marge and John were wonderful neighbors. We enjoyed many good times on the patio. I was in the military, certainly not to the extent, of John's accomplishments. He was a wonderful guy. When he passed, we were in North Carolina, and we have a little home in the Smoky Mountains, and we have kids and grandkids back there, so we're back there in the summer. We're kind of reverse snowbirds, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it works for us. Anyway, I shared John's bio that Laura had prepared with some of my pickleball buddies, all military guys, and they were amazed at his accomplishments and the life he had. And one friend in particular, Ron, said, he was a man who never stopped giving. And I said, yeah, he was. He was a man who never stopped giving. Anyway, I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him both. Just one day.
Okay, who's next? Big O, you have anything that you care to say? John O'Leary, we called him Big O because he was just as tall as John was, but he may have stepped out. Okay, how about Dave Thomas? You got any stories? You always have stories, right? Dave is a Roxborough volunteer, along with Louise and myself and many others in the room. And one of the women I want to tell you about is Elizabeth Moore. Elizabeth Moore was one of John's proteges for backpacking. And maybe talking about that, you'd like to come up and tell us what all John did for you to get you ready for the trail. Okay, but I'll turn it over to Dave now.
So Linda, you asked for this, huh?
I know you will give it 110%.
Indeed. Well, my story, I'm sure his family is not aware of this because it goes back to John's youth. They may not know this, but John was an excellent golfer. His life revolved around golfing. And as the story goes, this is before he was married, of course, he ran into a lady that, boy, they really clicked together. It was, I wouldn't say love at first sight, but boy, they were really communicating well, and etc. And they went out a few times. And finally, John said, I have to be honest with you. I'm kind of taken with you. And if we're going to continue with this, I need to be honest with you. I am a golf nut. I live and die golf. If I can play it, I play it. I'm a lifetime member with Golf Digest, and I just need to tell you that if we're going to go on with this relationship. And she said, well, I like golf, but if we're going to be honest with each other, I need to be honest with you. For the last 5 years, I've been a hooker. And John thought about it for a second and said, I think I know your problem. You're gripping the club too tight.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. And I will close it?
Yes.
Okay. I certainly will miss John a tremendous amount. And I had a wonderful, wonderful time with John and was in the backpacking experience with him. And my first hike on with CMC was with John. I think you were over in Brighton Ranch or Golden Gate, someplace fairly close by. And I had just mentioned that I was I'd be interested in backpacking. And he said, well, great, I have a trip in 2 weeks, you can go. And I had no idea what I was doing. But he had a great deal of confidence in me. I had grown up in the mountains and I was fairly flexible about, uncertain situations. And he showed me, he brought me his pack, and we met at Table Mesa and took everything out of the pack with the little weights and everything and gave me the list and said, okay, this is what you need. And you have 2 weeks to get it together, and I want you to get it together in 1 week because we've got to practice. So it was a pretty, big steep hill for me, but we did it, and I went on that backpacking trip. And people are here today from that backpacking trip. That was like my first time, and they were very, very patient with me. And we had a great time. There was one, and then I went on a few more backpacking trips with John. And one trip was kind of difficult, and I think it was supposed to be a bee backpacking trip hike, and I don't know, we managed to miss the camping spot or something, and we just kept going and going and going, and it kept getting harder and harder and harder, and John kind of took me aside, and he said, I think we should just keep going. And every 15 minutes, he and I would stop, and it became this very big joke, like we should just keep going. And eventually we made it to, some unknown camping space where we could, it was already dark, but we made it. And that ended up being a sea hike, which I got a lot of credit for. And, but John was just a wonderful, wonderful person. And he just downloaded information and capacity so easily that he just gave it away, and he gave a tremendous amount to me in a short period of time. And I'll always, always be thankful and grateful for that.
It's just about 2 o'clock. We have Julie Luce, who would like to come up and tell about her first trip with John.
Hi, I joined the Colorado Mountain Club 6 years ago when I first moved to Colorado, and at the time I was working night shifts, so I was able to go on a lot of weekday hikes with Linda and John. And my first hike with the club was at Meyer Ranch Park, which now I teach trick leader school there. But I remember asking John, like, what's your trick, what's your secret to hiking all these years? And he just said, never stop. And it seems like that's how he kind of lived it out until the end. And then a couple years ago, I was on a backpacking trip in the fall with John and Linda at Rocky Mountain National Park, and it was a 3-day trip. And I told John how I'd never seen a moose, and I'd gone on almost 100 hikes in Colorado, and I still had never seen a moose. And then we went off for a little side trip, and John was waiting for us near the trailhead. And when we got back, John was so excited when we were approaching him, and he'd found a family of moose, and there were 3 moose waiting for us at the end of the trip. So it was a perfect way to end the trip. So now whenever I see a moose, I will think of John.
And she she was adamant. She said, I have lived in this state 367 days and I have not seen one moose. My brother has lived here longer and he's seen moose, but I haven't seen one moose. So as we came down, there was the bull, the female, and the calf in the weeds. And John told his story about the moose, and his story was that he'd come down earlier, he went to replenish his water, and he's walking through the woods to get to the creek, and he sees some moose scat, and he thinks, well, maybe it's not the best place to get water, so he moves on up, more moose scat. So he moves a little farther up. Oh my God, there they are, the whole family. So he got to see all of those. And then he went and got the rangers, so the rangers could divert all the people on the trail so the moose family could have the woods all to themselves. Thank you all for coming and for telling and sharing your stories and your enthusiasm for celebrating John's life. And we reached the conclusion of our program, but that doesn't mean you can't stay and talk about him and his wonderfulness and awesomeness. And in your memorial to John, we have the bristlecone pine tree song. And John Acuff, our guitarist and CMC member, is going to play and sing that song for you. And one of the things that we want you to know is that the family did give me a small portion of John's ashes, and we will be having a memorial hike to the tree in the photograph inside. That tree is off of Hell's Hole. John's birthday was the 31st of January. We will try to do it around his birthday depending upon the snow depth. So there will be a memorial hike. We'll post it in the club. And forget all that stuff about leave no trace and not having more than 12 people. I know we'll probably have 50 people out there for a memorial hike. Thank you all so much for celebrating a life so well lived.